Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough.
Everybody, welcome into Going Public. I am Harry McCullough. This week we go to the South Lafourche Levee District. Their executive director is Nick Mathern. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, Harry.
Hadn't had a hurricane, knock on wood, but we've had almost the effects of it as we've had a little high water here with a couple of different events. Alberta too, right? We get an A name and we're having water issues. There's got to be issues that we got to worry about, right?
Right. By end of July, if we're not having serious hurricanes, that's a good year. But like you said, we did see the effects of storms even hitting southern Mexico. That we felt the effects here as that wind from the storm events going through the Gulf kind of pushed up here. I think mid-June, a lot of people saw, like you and I were talking before about in Cocodrie, Grand Isle, just the lower lying areas of the southern parishes flooding.
Now, levees. Now we got levees from, Lafourche, Terrebonne, obviously the big levee in New Orleans. Is that any issue why it's higher now on the outside of those levees?
To some degree, and we've actually been working with the Corps of Engineers as Morganza to the Gulf is more successful in constructing their levees. The water that used to go where those levees are now being built has to go somewhere. And so part of the post-authorization change report that was done for Morganza to the Gulf after it was authorized, many years ago, and then after a while, the Corps has to redo their numbers to make sure it's still going to be cost-effective, still in the best interest of the American people. That report included making sure that as Morganza to the Gulf connects with the South Lafourche levee system, that before it gets too high on Morganza, the Corps is going to come and lift our levees so that we don't have what's called inducements, where the water that would have been going there is now inducing flooding in our system. So it's definitely a factor.
Yeah, I remember Mississippi bringing it up, after they built the big wall in New Orleans.
Right.
I know Braithwaite, I think it was Isaac a couple of years after they built that wall, really had that issue. But yeah, I guess as we start fortifying the coast, that water does need to go somewhere.
And I think Braithwaite's a great poster child for exactly this issue, that you want levee protection all over the coast, but you got to make sure that you're not going to be negatively affecting your neighbors or subsidizing their efforts to raise themselves, because Braithwaite had that overtopping and scouring in the back, which caused the levee failure, and so it was a really sad situation.
Yeah, and look, I think that's the nature of water, right? It does go somewhere,
right?
Even when you go down to a neighborhood level, when something happens, they go, well, it's because of this guy.
Right. Yes.
So everybody wants to blame somebody. But so let's tell us what's happening.
Well, so in June, we did have some high water events. The first effect we saw of that was on June 18th. We actually have a video of a vessel that struck the Ted Gisclair floodgate in La Rose. We had about 1.5 foot differential between the outside and the inside. So when we open the gate, it makes it much harder for these vessels to navigate, trying to go against 1.5 foot of water trying to flood into the system. So the boat company immediately claimed fault, immediately notified us, and they're making repairs. So if anybody sees things working in the bayou in that location, they know. And then
their fault, but there was some circumstances, right?
Certainly, right.
Because he's going against 1.5 foot of water trying to come into that.
Right,
zone.
and that was about the time that Alberto was hitting southern Mexico, and like I said, we even felt the effects of that further into northern.
Do you feel that's coming? Do you know that's coming?
You don't really. I mean, obviously water's getting churned up in the Gulf, and like we said, water has to go somewhere, but you don't always know where it's going to go. Right. And NOAA will tell you that too, that these are best guesses that our meteorologists are making. And so, but we get into reactionary mode, and we've got to deal with it. So we end up having to close our Delta Farm road gate. And we have
that's what that is. That picture we
photos
saw?
of high water.
That's Delta Farm.
The outside of the system on Delta Farm Road. We had 5 inches of rain on June 19th. And the next picture will show how it just kept creeping up. And so we had to close that road gate. And in the next video that we have, we had to open the Rose floodgate only once every 24 hours because of that 1.5-foot differential of water. We normally open it 6 times a day, but because of this, we kept it to one opening per day in the morning. But on June 21st, we had 4 vessels heading north out of the system and 5 heading south. And so because of that, we had to keep that gate open for 26 minutes. So for half an hour.
26 minutes.
Right. We had 1.5 feet of water flooding into Bayou Lafourche inside of our system. So that day from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. for 15 hours, we had to turn on our siphon in Golden Meadow to get water out of Bayou Lafourche into our drainage canal and pump it out of the system.
So it took 15 hours to get rid of 26 minutes.
15 hours to take care of 26 minutes of water coming into the system.
Wow, that tells you a little bit how fast it was coming in.
Right.
And also, not to give that guy that much grief. I mean, you're trying to navigate barges trying to come through there, and that water is coming against him.
Absolutely.
That's why he hit that.
And so to us, it just really illustrates how important converting this floodgate into a lock has become for our community.
Right.
Because ideally, specifically for hurricane protection, it would have been best to not open that. But we are so dependent on the boating industry for for oil and gas service and commerce continuing up and down Bayou Lafourche. We had to open it, and so we as a levee district then have to be reactionary to manage the water that comes in so that our economy can continue to thrive.
So if those boats, if they'd have had 10 boats, you'd had to keep it open an hour?
A little longer, right?
I mean, you have to let traffic go.
Right. And so,
So when do you say, all right, y'all got to wait till the next time?
well, we kind of manage that on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
And if we see that it's going to be too long, we'll say, well, we won't be able to make an opening today, and we'll just wait for tomorrow. Some boats may decide to take another route to get where they're going, but we try to work with our industry as best we can.
Wow, it's incredible. Really incredible seeing that, too, and thinking of 1.5 foot water rushing in. All right, we'll take our first break. We'll be right back with Nick Mathern right here on Going Public.
Every day, thousands of people hit the road heading towards their dreams. But sometimes those dreams collide with a harsh reality. Auto accidents with 18-wheelers can change lives in an instant. That's why you need the experience and expertise of St. Martin & Borg. With over 50 years of experience, St. Martin & Borg have fought for justice for the victims of truck accidents.
If you've been in a wreck with an 18-wheeler, know your rights.
Call St. Martin & Borg today to schedule your free consultation.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Going Public. Harry McCullough here, Nick Mathern, Executive Director of South Lafourche Levee District. So we move on to some of the levee improvements, right? And that's ongoing as well, right?
And it always will be.
Yeah.
We like to tell people when hurricane season comes up that we're as prepared as we're going to be, because every year we're going to continue to
have it done now, right?
Right. And so it's the strength of our levees is not something that ever will concern me. We've proven that we have strong levees. Hurricane Ida was the biggest test, hopefully, that we'll ever have.
Right.
But was definitely a test of our strength of our levees, because we got to the top of our levees and overtopped in some cases, but thankfully not enough to get into any water or any water into homes or businesses. But we're always going to have to keep fighting subsidence and sea level rise that work together against us, and continue to lift and improve our levees as we go along.
Let me ask you, getting off a little bit on topic, I know that they're going to do the diversion thing. They're talking about the Barataria diversion in there. Would that bring more water into your system? And I know it'd be the eastern side of your system, but would that affect you guys at all?
It could potentially. More water in the system, as we mentioned before the break. Water has to go somewhere, and so to what nth degree that water is going to affect us, we don't know.
Still, it's still going to find its own level, but Oh, you would have more, but if it makes land over there, hopefully it'd be a good thing too.
Right, for sure.
So start pushing back some of that salt water. So let's talk about Section C in the North Levee.
Sure. Section C North is a section of our levee for about 4 miles that runs along the Burglar Rose Highway in La Rose down to about even with the Cote Blanche connection near Sacred Heart Church that connects LA1 to the Highway 3235, the 4-lane highway in the back. We've been lifting that levee to a elevation of plus 13. That work should be completed by the end of August. And where this reach of the section of levee ends, it meets up with reach L of Morganza to the Gulf and actually becomes part of the Morganza to the Gulf alignment. So ideally, I'm thinking this is not a section of levee we're going to have to worry too much about in the future, because with reach L being constructed to plus 11, ultimately plus 15 and beyond, we would hope to never actually have to see any levee improvements, that we wouldn't have water getting to that section of levee in the future.
Right.
So
yeah,
hopefully this will be one of the last times for a very long time we'll have to do any work to this levee.
Years from now, they'll think, oh, just some ancestors built these hills.
Right, right. So then moving further south, we saw on Section C South that after Hurricane Ida, we had a lot of debris wash up along the toe of the levee.
Oh, yeah.
And we had to retrieve that and dispose of it. A lot of it was marsh grass we were to burn and save the taxpayers millions, literally millions of dollars. Right. And so, but removing that debris caused some damage to the flood side toe of the levee. And so we've been working with FEMA to get a grant through their recovery assistance programs to go and put 2 feet of dirt along the toe of the levee just to kind of rebuild and fortify the flood side toe, which is the most vulnerable.
Is that the repairs we were looking at right
so
there?
those are the repairs that we have. We have some photos of. That should be complete within the next couple months, and again, all being completely reimbursed by FEMA. So that's good news for us. And then on the eastern side of our system, we've been working along Section E north of our levee, which is around Cloverleaf Farms, behind the 308 side of the community, to stockpile material, about 500,000 cubic yards of material along that section of levee, which did see some overtopping for Ida. So that's one of the areas we wanted to get into as quickly as we could and address. So we've got a contractor coming in to stockpile 500,000 cubic yards of material along this 4-mile stretch. And then we're coming back up with our own equipment, our own excavators and bulldozers, and a couple contractors as needed to then shape that material into a levee lift, mostly in-house. And so that's going to get us up from a plus 14 where we were for Hurricane Ida when we had 16 feet of water, to a plus 16.
Oh, good.
So,
and that's farm. That's Clover Farms.
That's Cloverleaf Farm, correct. Yeah. And one of the odd things about that overtopping, just the success story that we had. Obviously, Hurricane Ida was completely devastating for the community, but it was mostly a wind damage hurricane for South Lafourche because of our levees. And so because we've done so much work to our levees, we had minimal overtopping, like I said, no water in homes and businesses. Cloverleaf Farms was flooded, but when the season was done, they ended up having a record season because of the amount of water that came in. So that was a little bit of a silver lining on a terrible situation, obviously.
Yeah, no homes right there. That's a farm. You can actually see it from that high level area as well. So looking on to Section F.
Section F, correct, is the next section north along our system, north of Cloverleaf Farms in Section E. And so this project is running from the Intracoastal along Delta Farm Road, south along the backside of that community to Cloverleaf Farms. And we're lifting not the levee itself, but the protected side berm. So the berm is what gives the levee its stability on the inside and holds up the material for the actual body of the levee cross section itself. So we've had contractors trucking in material from just outside the system, just north of us, and bringing in that material, shaping it into a more solid and fortified berm. A lot of the areas of this berm were about 5 feet below sea level. And so this project is bringing it up to sea level. And when you see the vast difference between the sections that have been addressed and that haven't been, it's a lot more comforting knowing that stability that we're going to have moving forward to that part of the levee, just because it was so low on the inside.
Yeah. So getting just to sea level would be a good start. Right?
Correct.
Yeah, it's a good way to go. But so those two connect.
Right, Section F and Section E North, correct.
Makes sense. All right, we'll take one more break. We'll be right back right here on Going Public.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health System. Your health is our legacy. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bork, know your rights.
Everybody, welcome back to Going Public. Harry McCullough been in our last segment, South Lafourche Levee District, and Nicholas Mathern. So, let's finish off with what's happening now, and then we'll go to what's next, right?
Sure. So the other project that we just wrapped up is, if anyone's noticed, it crossed over the Intracoastal and the Rose on the east side. We've installed a series of pile clusters to protect our flood wall that we improved over time. So this was kind of a negotiation that we ended up doing with the Corps of Engineers, because this was one of the situations where we saw a need. The Corps wasn't moving fast enough. And so we said, we're not waiting for you, we're protecting our people. And so we went and elevated this wall that you see behind these pile clusters. And after the fact, the Corps came and said, well, we don't like your design, so we want you to have some kind of foreshore protection that's going to minimize the chances of a vessel running into it. And so this series of pile clusters was kind of the negotiation. It was either this or tear down the wall. Right. And we weren't about to tear down the wall. Right. So we ended up compromising and coming up with this design.
Well, that's a good idea. Even if you're going back to New Orleans and the Industrial Canal, you had a couple of barges break loose and broke up those levees, and that's what ended up going into, the lower ninth. You wouldn't want a barge that got loose in a storm hitting that levee, right?
Correct, because it'd be pretty catastrophic.
Right.
And the Corps did come behind us, and the wall improvement that we did came behind us and put some rocks from the Intracoastal Bridge to the La Rose floodgate. But then they ran out of money, had issues going under the bridge, and like the federal government just said, we'll leave it to you guys to figure out.
Good luck.
And so we ended up figuring out what would be the most.
That actually looks good,
there,
but that's not a bad look, right?
No, it came out pretty well. We're pretty happy with it. So now we get to move forward and put that behind us and put our money where we feel we need it. Much more importantly.
Okay, so that's A West and A East levee improvement.
Right. So the southernmost portions of our levee on the western side is Section A West, and on the east, Section A East. And so these sections of levee are at about between 16 feet and 18 feet right now. We are currently in design to elevate these sections to 19 and a half feet. Mm-hmm. And they're both already completely funded. The funding is there from the Louisiana Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, some from oil and gas revenue sharing through the Gulf of Mexico Energy Security Act, and some funding coming from state surplus. So we figure the A East project, we're estimating that to cost right around $7 million. So we got 3.6 from one, 3.4 from another, and we're in the final stages of getting that design approved by the state and their geotechnical engineers to make sure that our design is sound, which we're confident it is. And so we're going to be moving on that in the next.
So they'll almost be at 20 feet. Yeah.
Almost at 20 feet on the eastern.
That's the originals. That's the original levees.
That's the original alignment, correct. So the alignment of our levee was drawn largely along existing Lafourche Parish and Town of Golden Meadow drainage levees, and then filling in gaps where there were no levees beforehand. So the design of some of our levees has confused people over time, but that's the explanation of why it's shaped the way it is. Yeah. Just using those existing levees as a good foundation for stronger and higher levees.
All right, so we saw east and west. Now we go to B South and B North.
Sure. So starting around the Golden Meadow Park, Oak Ridge Park in the town of Golden Meadow, moving north, that's where we have sections B South and B North. These, to me, are going to be our next most critical areas to address, just because we sacrificed width of the levee in those cases for additional height, which, you've got to make some kind of sacrifices somewhere. Money is very limited. But the design itself was obviously fairly sound because, again, these levees saw 16 feet of water a night and we had no failures.
Right.
So we're looking now to go back and refortify our already pretty
Giving them
sound
width,
levees.
you mean?
Right. So we're going to expand the width and the footprint of the cross section of the levee itself, and that'll get us up from currently 16 feet to plus 18 feet. So
Wow.
we're going to add 2 feet in addition to
And going up. So you're going north and width and height.
Right. So,
So-
that project's just in design right now, working with the state to identify a good funding source. But that'll probably, just that entire section, both of those sections of the levee, probably be close to $10 million to lift and expand.
Well, those are good. And then to finish off, we started with the Ted Gischler. It was the lock. It's not a lock.
It's not a lock
That was just a
currently,
gate.
correct.
Now this is where you want to go, is with a lock.
Right. So in Golden Meadow, we had a similar situation where back in the 80s, the Corps of Engineers built the what we now call the Lee Ontario flood. Well, now it's the lock, but it was a Lee Ontario floodgate. And then from 2007 to 2009, the South Lafourche Levee District came behind and north of that gate and built a second set of floodgates, creating a lock. Now, like we mentioned before, even in our biggest differentials between the inside and the outside, it's only about 1.5 feet. It's not, 10, 20 feet difference, like if you're trying to come off the Mississippi River.
Sure.
So like if you cross the bridge into downtown Baton Rouge, you'll see the lock coming off the Mississippi River in Port
Or
Sulphur.
Port Allen, yeah.
Or Port Allen, right, sorry. And so that system of locks has a pump that either introduces or takes out water from that lock system to raise or lower the vessel to the correct water level to open the lock on the other end. We don't really have that issue in Golden Meadow. It's enough of a head differential that we can manage it. We're looking to do the same thing in LaRose. So the video that we showed at the beginning of the program, where we had 1.5 feet of water and vessels struggling to get in and out, and we had to make this decision: do we potentially sacrifice flood protection for commerce or commerce for flood protection? We won't have to make that decision in the future.
Right. No, and that seems to be the key. And when you can get to those points, where everybody's trying to do that, when the Bubba Dove here and trying to get one on the Intracoastal down the road, that's where you can really make a difference and freshen everything up on the inside. Well, Nick, we sure appreciate the update, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
That's Nicholas Mathern with South Lafourche Levee District. That's Going Public. I'm Harry McCullough. We'll see you guys next time.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality.